CGC has been the undisputed comic book grading company for the past 25 years. There have been many competing grading companies in those years, but none with the same prestige as CGC. However, PSA, a reputable grading company, especially in the realm of cards, has now thrown their hat in the comic book grading realm. Is it possible for PSA to be a true competitor against the undisputed champion CGC? In this video, I will be comparing from slab structure all the way to marketability. Stay tuned.
Fat dad, gonna put on a shirt. Will it fit? No, it can't, 'cause he eats all the food. Look out, here comes a fat dad.
Hi, Will of Fat Dad Comics here. A couple of weeks ago, I received a PSA submission. I wanted to see what the slabs were like, how it looked in person. I watched a lot of unboxing videos. I heard a lot of people's opinions. I've been paying attention to a lot of these things, and I thought I'd make my own assessment and comparison of the two slabbing companies and the two slabs. So the first thing you're going to notice is slab structure. After I got my PSA submission, the very first thing I noticed was the difference in weight between the two slabs. The CGC slab weighs exactly 1 pound, whereas the PSA weighs 1 pound and 8 ounces, a whole half of a pound more. The second thing I noticed was it's slightly thicker, about 1/8 of an inch thicker. Now the CGC slab is about 1/8 of an inch longer or higher, and then they are exactly the same width-wise. So I had this thought in my head right away. I was like, I wonder if they interlock. So if you lay your CGC slab down flat and you put it in, it will lock. It locks. So they do interlock. But not as well when the CGC slab's on top. If I go the other way around and I put my CGC slab on my PSA slab, it's actually locks in pretty solidly. So they do have this interlockability kind of thing between the two. And again, that 1/8 of an inch is not going to make that much of a difference height-wise when it comes to the two slabs. So that was the first thing I noticed in my slab structure. Tamperability. So as we know, CGC has had their fair share of controversy surrounding their slab being tampered with, where people were actually able to heat the slab up, pull the comic book out from the inner well, and then slide in lesser grades, and then get that comic book regraded, so they'll get like another 9.8. Meanwhile, they stuck in like an 8.5 inside of a 9.8 case or whatever. And this was going on apparently for years, and they were getting away with it for years. And this was discovered within the past year, I believe. So that was like a huge controversy that was going on. So we know that tamperability in the CGC slab, I mean, up until now, it is possible for people to do those things. And there's even instances I think I saw of people doing high res photocopies of comic books and even the label itself, and they're sliding that in as well. I believe CGC has made some changes to how well their slabs are being sealed. PSA, on the other hand, I mean, it's too early to tell. I mean, they're months in. I will say that, I mean, this thing is bulletproof. It is pretty solid, and as far as like tamperability, it remains to be seen. Tamperability remains to be seen, but so far, it just seems more durable. So the trust and tamperability, I think, will go more along the lines of the PSA slab. I never held a PSA card that's been slabbed before. I don't know if there's been anything uh, surrounding any controversies with cards being swapped out or anything like along the lines of what was happening with CGC comic books. But as far as like the slabs are concerned, PSA slab does seem more durable. UV protection. I thought I heard it mentioned that this thing is the PSA slab does have UV protection, where CGC slabs do not. And I thought that was like a big, or should have at least should have been a really big selling point when it comes to the collectible world. And it was just, I always found it funny that I didn't hear a lot about that. And then just with a quick uh, search on the interwebs, they don't. So no, there is no uh, substantial UV protection for any of these slabs. It's little to none for both of these slabs. So as far as UV protection is concerned, as of right now, uh, it's a no for both PSA and CGC. Overall, I would give a slight edge for the slab structure to PSA. The label. The blue universal CGC grade has become the standard. When compared to the PSA label, they truly are apples to oranges. PSA's grade appears on the right as opposed to the CGC's being on the left, and it appears in a bolder, larger font than the PSA label. PSA has maintained the same label aesthetic as their other collectibles. For some, the change in what is normally seen across walls in shops and cons is unfamiliar, making it less desirable. For others, the change feels fresh and provides some novelty to the hobby. CGC censors their descriptions on the front of their labels, while PSA has them on the margins. Font is bolder on CGC, while PSA has smaller font size and is less bold. In a hobby where the demo is within their 40s, I think font size is a big deal. CGC also provides colors for special instances occurring with the book. For instance, you have the blue universal label, which everyone knows. Then you have your yellow signature series label, your yellow with black stripe label for authenticated signatures, your purple labels for your restoration, which also provide some information on the type of restorations and level of restoration on the label. And then you have your green qualified label. PSA labels, no matter what's going on with it, whether it's a restoration, a signature, or just a standard grade, looks exactly the same. And you get this small font description letting you know whether it was signed, whether it was restored, or what have you. As far as the label is concerned, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think it is subjective as far as how people feel about it. Again, it feels like you walk on a con floor, you're used to seeing the CGC. CGC's been around for so long, you see that label, it feels like home. It's comfortable. PSA label is going to take some time to get used to. But the problem is also, will anybody ever get used to a PSA label, being that it doesn't really differentiate between these things like CGC does? So I think this is a big problem, and this is a big point of contention with collectors. All the old heads like things to remain the same. Nobody wants change, believe it or not. Maybe the younger crowd will like it. I don't know anybody really young enough or ask anybody who's on the younger side what they feel about these two grading companies. I think they're more into the whole new comic book day thing and less into the grading. So it remains to be seen. I think for me, with all these things and all these issues, I feel like PSA labels do have, even though they are flexible They're more than flexible. They have made changes throughout the small amount of time that they've been grading on their labels. It's a big edge, heavy edge. CGC has the better label, and maybe time will tell, but I doubt it if PSA is not willing to make a real change as far as like these uh, differentiators with what's going on with your comics. The grading. It's not really enough of a sample size to compare grading. CGC has been doing it for so long. They have years and years and years of grading. So, I mean, they have their standard, and I think it was the Overstreet Guide that was the grading standard, but CGC has a slightly different standard based off of that. And I think the CGC standard is the standard if people are using that grading company the most. This is what you're going to go off of. And they're tougher graders on anything beyond a 9.8. So 9.9 or Gem Mint, which would be a 10, are very rare, hard to come by. And PSA seems to be handing out a lot more Gem Mints in their early days than CGC is willing to in their 25 years. I mean, if we look at it based on the rate from time of the inception or the start of PSA grading comic books through the 25-year period that CGC has been doing it, I'm sure the rate of Gem Mints handed out is astronomical. However, CGC has admitted that they were on purpose grading harder on those 9.9s and 10.0s, kind of like a manipulation of the market, if you think about it. And I forget who it was, but the there if something is a 9.9 or a 10, which PSA does not do a 9.9, so you got a 9.8 and the next grade is a 10. But if the book is a gem mint, if it's absolutely flawless, it deserves, it should be given the grade that it deserves. You know, a 10 is a 10, is a 10 is a 10. The 9.8s that you see sometimes, like the distance between a 9.8 and a 9.9 is so vast. Like you could see 9.8s with multiple spine ticks that actually break color or blunted corners, and you'll still get that 9.8. And then sometimes you'll see a 9.8 where it looks like absolutely nothing is wrong with the book, and that's how wide it is. And then going beyond that, like Gem Mint and all that stuff, you know, they've been giving out 9.9s now. They have 9.9 pre-screens, but I mean, I guess it makes sense in the modern comic world where you're gonna have that chance of getting more 9.9s. People just grade just about anything anyway. I know I've been guilty of it. So there's that. But I just, as far as like grading is concerned, it's hard to tell whether we can trust PSA grading over CGC, because CGC has had their faux pas, and we've seen, you know, 9.8s handed out with poor grade, you know, seemingly poor condition on the book or defects on the book. But I will say this: in a CGC forum, there was this Superman #1 in a CGC 1.0 purple label with a restoration. The restoration notes were centerfold and first 2 pages trimmed. This book was crossed over to a PSA, which PSA promoted proudly. The only thing missing on their label was any mention of that restoration. And there's people who have looked into this and gave their explanation as to why this may have occurred, where maybe the trim was not noticeable or what have you. Not sure, but for CGC being so, I'm sorry, for PSA being so new as a comic book grader, a Superman 1.0 crossed over, you miss a restoration. I mean, will people have trust in putting in their golden age and silver age books in the hands of a PSA grader when something that significant is missed? I don't know. I mean, so there's that issue. Um, I think as far as like as it goes right now, based on the time that CGC has been doing this, setting the standard, grading is going to have to go on the side of CGC. The next thing I want to talk about is resale value. CGC, it's because PSA is in its infancy, it's really hard to compare the two in like early sales data. So there have been some PSA sales that are comparable or even above what CGC slabs have sold for. However, for the most part, CGC holds a higher value uh, in the market as it stands right now, which makes absolute sense, being that there's more of them out there. CGC has been around the longest, so you're gonna get a better. You have trust in the company, even though there are plenty of people who say that they don't really have much trust in it, but there's more trust in the company. Now, there was a very specific comic book sold. Fun Comics number 73, first appearance of Aquaman, Green Arrow, and Speedy, sold in a heritage auction for $40,800 on September 11th of 2025. And then that same book was resubmitted to CGC, got the same grade. However, the fair market value for that book went all the way up to $66,000 in a CGC slab. So also the person who bought it off the heritage auction and got it slab with CGC does say that they prefer CGC. Now, I conducted my own poll on soon after I got my CGC submission on where people are going with, like, where do their allegiances lie, and it was hands down with CGC. I would say overwhelmed, like 66 to 33. That I believe that was what it was. Most people just have that love for it. I think resellers specifically prefer CGC. They're going to get the highest bang. They're going to get the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to reselling their slabs. So that's that. Resellers are going to want that. And honestly, if you're a buyer, for the very same reason, you're going to want something that's going to hold higher value. Whether we want to admit it or not, even if like for like all of my books behind me and in my collection are mine. They're for my collection, and I want to know that it holds. If someone asked me how much this Amazing Spider-Man number 361 is worth, I'm gonna give it in a PSA grade. I don't know what it. Let's see what they go for. On eBay, we got a sale of $309 on the 20th of November. Today is the 23rd of November. The one previous to that sold for $399. That was on November 19th. I will put this on the screen for you guys to see. Then another one November 18th for $261.69. And then some human being decided, oh, they took the offer. I don't know what the offer was. They were selling it for $475. They probably bought it for $400. So there goes that. And let's see if I put, so this was searching a CGC. I'm going to try PSA. PSA 9.8. Okay. The last one was on November 2nd for 449.99. And this is what I'm talking about. That's the only sales data. Everything else is CGC. 294, 265, 309, 400, but they accepted an offer for less, probably 350 or something like that. 319 on the 16th of November, CGC 9.8, 300 flat, September 12th. September 24th, 300. Someone, oh, it's a second print, so that doesn't count. Uh, Another one for 280 on October 16th. So like you get it. Like the sales data, it's not enough there. I would say that's an anomaly. The 449. I don't think that I can sell this for 450 right now. I know I can't. Probably somewhere around $300. It's what it's looking like. Maybe 325. That's the resale value with just an example of these two books right here. This is not a 9.8, but like let's all imagine that it's a 9.8. Resale value, it's going to go to CGC. You got to, they've been around longer. The trust is there. There's more of them out there. People are going to want their walls to look like this behind me with all their CGC slabs. You got all the labels. So resale value, we're going to go CGC. And if you think about all the things that I went over, talking about slab structure, talking about its label, talking about its grading standards, and finally talking about its resale value, CGC takes 3 out of 4 in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion. I mean, slab structures, I think it's like a runaway thing for me. It's a solid slab. I don't know if the weight of it is going to be a big deal for people. It's going to be harder to lug around, I guess. And when I got my submission just for 8 books, it was a giant box. Where at CGC, probably the same sized box, you can get up to 25 books in one box, the same. So it's a half a pound more per book. So that makes sense. So there's that too. I don't know. I like the way PSA sends their stuff. It's pretty. Might be a little overkill, and they'll probably um, really iron those things out. But like they do have like the foam dividers I showed in like that CGC PSA submission video a couple of weeks ago. So I like that. But it looks like the winner when comparing the two right now is going to be CGC. I think most people just trust. Most people. The thing that I'm getting, like, I think there's a lot of hope. I'll put it to you like this: CGC is the standard, and they're still going to be the undisputed champion of the comic book grading uh, world right now. Is PSA a real competitor? I think they are. They can be. Will they overtake CGC? I think we're gonna look at it kind of like the Xbox, PlayStation. I think PlayStation, you know, runs away with those console wars, but there are people who swore by the Xbox and who were just straight up Xbox, and there were enough of a competitor where there was a conversation and there was a discussion at the height of those wars. But PlayStation just again you know they ran away with that, and I think CGC is always going to be that thing. But PSA can be. I could see those walls starting to look a little different when you walk on the con floor or you walk into a comic shop in years to come. You're gonna see a nice chunk of those red and white PSA labels up there. And I don't know, maybe they're gonna continue. I mean, they have been shown that they were flexible with their labels as the months have been going along. You know, because it's still just months old in the comic book grading world, and it's made a bunch of changes uh, since then. And so, I mean, maybe they will do something similar to CGC where you'll get different colors or something that's visually from far away you can tell if it's signature series or if it's just your universal grade or what have you. Maybe they will change the font so us old collectors, or maybe they're just waiting for us to die. Maybe us old guys will just die, and then the young kids with the good eyesight, they'll be fine with it. I mean, Pokemon cards are huge, so PSA I believe is the grading company for cards, so maybe that's how they'll overtake. But I do think that they're a viable if they could maintain integrity, listen to their customers. I think PSA has a chance, and I think a lot of people are actually really excited to know about PSA, the prospect of PSA being a real competitor, being a real option. CBCS looked like they could have a chance, but they never quite. They just couldn't. They were like the CGC little brother. They were like, they tried. People, a lot of people tell me that they love CBCS, their grading standard. They even like their slabs. I don't see many CBCS slabs out there. I've actually seen more PSA slabs recently than I've seen CBCS slabs like for years. It's CGC is still number one, but I mean, let's see what happens. I like the PSA slab. I'm not a hater of the label. I actually do like the label. The boldness, this got to change. The fact that it's on the margins, I don't like that. I like that this is nice front and center. You know, this is where CGC gets it right on the label. You got this. It's there's emphasis on this grade. It's bigger font. Everything is censored. Even all this like small stuff that you could see, but like this is Amazing Spider-Man number 361. The time that it came out. Um, you get that here too, right? But I don't know. It's on the margins. People don't like change. I think that's what it is. I like the label. I like the slab. I know that CGC holds higher value, and so I might be more. It may behoove me to put my uh, comics inside of a CGC slab. But you know what? I don't know. Let's see what happens in the time moving forward. So I made my comparisons to the CGC PSA slab up and down. Again, I think CGC is still your undisputed champion, but look out for PSA's chance to or ability to truly compete in this comic book realm, grading realm. For those of you who even like graded comic books, I mean, this is for you guys if you like it. So, uh, like I like to say at the end of my videos, stay tuned and keep collecting.